Sorry, I said Andrew. I knew it was an A, and I was trying to test my memory and I
Nice to meet
failed.
you. Welcome to the podcast. Your name's Bentley, right? Is that what you go by?
Yes,
All
yes,
right.
Bentley.
And you're dealing with the California fire, LA fire situation right now, and you
Yeah.
actually almost weren't able to make and do this podcast because you thought it might be
Oh, you're cutting
encroaching
out.
your just another day in the life of doing podcasts. We're gonna solve this Rubik's cube eventually. Welcome back, Bentley.
Thank you.
I'm sure I'll edit that somehow. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but we'll figure it out later.
Well,
You're
maybe if
dealing
you.
with the fire situation right now. You're having connection issues. I think mine's probably okay, but then there's also a crap ton of snow. I'm not sure what's going on the outside, but it seems okay. We'll just roll with it and see what happens.
Sounds good.
Oh. How are you dealing with the fire situation? I want to get caught up, because catch the audience up with exactly why this podcast actually got delayed a little bit.
Yeah. Well, when we first set up to do this podcast, there were no fires, and as you know, people know, a couple days ago these fires started, and I live in Woodland Hills, which is over the mountain from Pacific Palisades. So it wasn't too scary at first, but then it started growing really fast, as people know.
Mm.
And it's a little scary because out my back door there's a valley, and on the other side of the valley is the mountain range, and right on the other side of that, all the smoke is coming up. And if the fire gets to that mountain range top, it's really bad news because embers can just drift right across the valley and start igniting
Mm-hmm.
our side of the hill.
They'll just blow right
So
across and catch things on fire.
yeah, so I mean, as of right now, it's just kind of touch and go. And my heart is just aching for all the people affected by this. And I don't want to complain because I'm still okay,
Sure, yeah.
Um, the, the people in my situation, I'm sure, are experiencing the same thing. You're not getting good night's sleep because you're sleeping with your phone alerts on. And
Mm-hmm.
those are coming through every hour or half hour, and you're having to check it to make sure you're not being told to leave.
If you're sleeping at
Um,
all.
if you're sleeping at all, exactly. And you don't want to go too far from the house just in case you have to go back and grab stuff to go and
Imagine
evacuate our
if this is how
houses.
the apocalypse started, and we started experiencing it just because we were starting a podcast, and then my thing,
Right.
all the power gets cut out to mine, and then I freeze to death, and then you burn to death, and then that's how the world starts.
That's great. I hope not.
I would prefer
Uh,
I would prefer other circumstances, but you
yeah.
do what you got to do. uh,
It's so touch and go here that we almost didn't do this today because when I woke up, I looked out across that valley and the smoke is really present and it's really close and it looks like it could come over that mountaintop. And I didn't want to be in the middle of talking with you and suddenly be like, hey, bro, gotta go, you know?
No, I mean if you need to leave, we can
Yeah.
reschedule or
Yeah.
do this some other time. Don't worry about it.
If I have to leave, we'll leave the camera on. You can get the footage from the inside as
Oh,
the
I'll
house
just
goes
live
down.
stream your house burning down.
Right. Exclusive.
Oh man.
Inside a house burning down. Good. Well, hopefully
Oh
that doesn't happen.
no, that it'd be interesting to see how the fire interacts with the green screen. It's a good
Right?
looking green screen, by the way.
Oh, thanks, man. Little flames flicker up and go
Yeah,
out.
it'll just start blending. It'll look like some really bad like '90s CG and everything. It'll look great.
That's funny.
Oh,
The day before the fire, my girl and I went down we actually traveled over to Topanga Canyon Boulevard and hardly ever drive that. But we wanted to go down to Pacific Palisades just to get some content to post online and stuff. And we were picking out spots on Topanga Canyon that we wanted to shoot some stuff. And we
mm-hmm.
should have grabbed it because 24 hours later, it was burned down. And we were talking on that day, the day before the fire, saying, man, these houses are so cool, but I'd never want to buy one because your whole life can go up in flames in 2 seconds if you lived here. And
Yeah.
we were talking about it, and 24 hours later, there it was happening.
Mm.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. When I
Unbelievable.
took a look at when I first took a look at your material that you sent me your IMDb list, and I looked at your Instagram bio, and you do a number of different things I think would be interesting to get into. You started acting in the mid 80s, if I recall correctly, and then
Yeah.
predominantly up through the 90s, so a good decade and a half of just, project after project. And then it seems recently you kept still making and being part of short films. It seems mostly through the 2000s, presumably as you started kicking up your music ambitions a little bit. Tell me
Yeah.
about your journey through how you got started in film and when you decided to transition a little bit more into music, and how you balance those two worlds out.
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I was actually born into an acting family. Uh, my father's father, so my paternal grandfather, was a Hollywood actor named Robert Mitchum. And back in the day, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, some, and then 80s and 90s, it started to wane. But he was a very huge movie star.
Mm,
And his brother was also a big, I wouldn't say as big a star, but he did over 100 films. And my father was an actor who did 80 films or something. And my uncle and my sister's on a soap opera. And on my mom's side, her father was one of the original Our Gang members, which later became Little Rascals. And
I see.
yeah, and her uncle was Harold Lloyd. So I was kind of born into, on both sides of my family, father and mother, into the film business. My first interest was not film acting, but I was very interested in the prosthetic makeup. I wanted to be the person who made the monsters. And so that's where I started, and I started studying that. And around my junior year in high school, I think it was, CBS reached out to my dad and my granddad and said that they were doing a movie starring or of three generations, and they were wondering if my dad and my granddad would like to play a fictional father and son team. And my dad said, "Yeah, that sounds great, but I also have a son who fits the age. Let me see if he'd like to be
I
interested
see.
in being in it. And if you're interested, maybe we can have three generations playing a fictional three generations." And so CBS thought that was a great idea. And so we made the movie in 1985. That was my first film. And I got bitten by the acting bug. I had so much fun and I liked it. And I ended up going to USC to the BFA program there to
Mm,
study drama. And I started working after that film. I got an agent and studied. I didn't want anyone to think that the only reason I was getting hired was because of my family name. And I knew
mm.
that that was out there. And in any other business, it doesn't matter. It's actually a plus. Like if you're a plumber and your son's a plumber,
Right.
the
Yeah.
people are like, yeah, the
There's
son's
a
a
sense
plumber.
of
He's got to be
reliability
good.
that comes along with the family name and
Yeah.
like a trade or something like that.
Uh-huh. But when it's an actor, suddenly it's like you're a piece of crap because you're writing your family's name. It's a weird thing. It's like every family can hand down the business except for the
Hmm.
entertainment.
I never
But
understood that, frankly.
yeah, but that's how I got into it, and I really liked it, and I can't deny that my family uh, definitely helped in that. I mean, I wouldn't have done my first film had it not been the family I was born into. Nothing I can do to help it, but I did take it seriously, and I didn't want to ride any coattails. I wanted to earn my place in the film business. And so from 85 to about 2001, I actively was pursuing acting. I did a film with Ashley Judd that won the Sundance Film Festival. I actually worked with Reese Witherspoon on her very first film.
I saw the Man on the
I
Moon, Man in the Moon, on the
Yeah,
Moon,
Man in the Moon.
Man in the Moon.
In
Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually a really wonderful film. There's a lot of stories behind that film. When that film was being cast, the lady who was working on the casting was a lady named Beverly Dean, and
Mm.
she's since passed. But it came down to two people for the role I was up for in that movie, and it was between me and another unknown actor named Brad Pitt. And
Ah,
she actually liked my videotape and my performance better than Brad's. So when she sent the tapes to the director who was already in Louisiana, to cast it, he only got the tape of me, so of course he went with me.
I wonder
Now,
what happened to that other tape.
well, here's the great thing. While I'm filming that, Brad auditions for Thelma and Louise.
Ah, I
He
see.
he never would have been able to audition for that had he gotten the role.
Hmm.
And Thelma and Louise is what launched Brad's career.
Yep.
So he was destined to do that and not be in this one. And the movie that I did, Man in the Moon, um, right when it was about to come out, Pathé and I think it was MGM's involved, but they lost their funding, and so it only got released to I think 3 theaters. And the movie had 6 Academy Award winners behind the camera, Academy Award winners in front of the camera. This thing was poised to be uh, a movie of the year kind of movie, just a
Hmm.
beautiful film, and it ended up getting very little release. So that was I'm just telling you the story of my life, and that was one of the films that I really thought, this could be a career breaker because it's such a wonderful film. And
What
then
was it like to
fate
work
would
with
have it that
a
the
number with
financing,
cast and
when it
crew
came to
on a,
distribute, the financing got lost.
right, right. Well, with
Um,
financing,
oh,
the
but you're
thing
cutting out.
I am. Can you hear me?
I can't hear what you're saying. I don't know if you're saying. If you want to text me a question, I can also do it that way. If you're reading me, fine.
Okay.
Um, but since I can't hear you, I'll just continue until I am able to hear you, I guess. So after that, I did some things. I played Winnie Cooper's brother in Wonder Years. I I did a lot of films overseas, some independents, got to travel a lot. And one of my last films that I did was a film over in India, and it was called Little John. And I actually filmed 3 different films at the same time, one in Tamil, one in Hindi, and one in English. And I had to do the Indian folk dancing and singing. And that film, I mentioned it because it was one of the last um, films that I did when I was really pursuing acting. And here we are, almost 25 years later, and the film has got a life of its own over in India. And all the kids from that time, because it was a family movie, are reaching out now, telling me what a hero I was to them in their childhood. Um, so thank you. I just got your text.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so they're reaching out a lot, and I'm getting a lot of followers on my Instagram and on my socials. And it's kind of funny because I know that when people buy their followers, a lot of the followers show up as followers from India. And I haven't purchased one follower in my entire life. But if you go to my Instagram and look at my followers, you'll see that probably 60, 70% of my followers are from India. And that's from the Little John movie. So then I was feeling around 2000, 2001, I was feeling the pressure of being an actor in Los Angeles. I was feeling like if I stop for 1 second, every other actor is going to go past me. So I always had like a gun that I put to the back of my head to make sure I kept going and working and always doing something, outwork the other actors in LA. And I think I just got burnt out. I finally just was like, I can't anymore. I need a break. So I packed up my girl at the time, and we moved to Texas. And I like Texas, and I chose Texas because one of the things I was doing was teaching seminars on acting. I taught them from Hawaii all the way to Maine, and I helped a lot of actors with that. I have actors that were on HBO and other shows, but Texas always had a big turnout when I would do the teaching there. And so I thought if I moved there, then I would be able to open up a class. And that's what I did. I started teaching some acting in Texas and just getting away from being an actor and getting some peace of mind. I was going out for auditions in Los Angeles for the guy next door. And I didn't even know what that was because the guy next door was an actor when you live in LA. So I just wanted to go to Texas and be a normal person. And I did. And while I was there, because of my family and the credits and stuff I had done, a lot of the people in the industry in Texas found me, and we did some small projects here and there, some short films and stuff. But it really wasn't where my focus was. In 2019, I got a call uh, that my daughter, I had a daughter um, that lived in Los Angeles, and I got a call that she had been found unresponsive, and I didn't know what that
Mm.
meant. And they said get out here. I flew out, and my daughter was in the hospital being kept alive by machines. Um, and after about a week, on July 4th, 2019, she passed away. Uh, I went back to Texas, gathered all my stuff. I was engaged to a woman at the time, and we moved to California. And when we got here, the woman I was with said she was going to go visit her grandmother for her birthday, who she was turning like 96 or something. And I was like, please go. Yeah, I don't want anything to happen to her. But she went to New Jersey to visit her grandmother and never came back and never returned my calls or my texts. She just basically ghosted me. And right at that same time, my health went, and I found
Mm.
myself basically fighting for my life in the hospital. So this all happened in 2 months. My daughter dying, my fiance ghosting me, my health going, and I was living in Santa Barbara because I just moved to
That's
California.
awful.
So yeah, I had no friends or family. It was probably the worst time of my life in my entire life. I've never suffered more than this time in my life.
And this was
And
2019.
this was 20 end of 2019,
How old
and
was she when she passed, if I can ask?
how what?
How old was she
Oh,
when she passed?
my daughter was 28.
I see.
You-
Mm.
It's it's weird because when I say that, it seems like, oh, because she's older, it doesn't mean as much, but it does. It's like your child is always your child, and you'll always see her
Yeah.
as that little baby you held in your arms. And it was devastating. It was like I said, I'd never suffered that much before in my life. And I went into 2020, and COVID had started just then too. So it was COVID,
Right.
ghosted, daughter dying, moving across the country, fighting for my life in operations, and tubes coming out of me. And that's how I spent the next almost 8 months recovering in isolation. And my suffering was so bad that it would wake up before I did, and I would fall asleep before it went to sleep. And the
Mm.
only way I could get away from the pain I was feeling was if I was watching like some kind of self-help video from Eckhart Tolle or
I see.
Deepak Chopra, or I was reading or self-help books or writing. I did the AA program, free therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I basically just, if I stopped doing some kind of work or healing, the second I stopped, the pain came back, and it was too much.
Where did your
And
creativity come into play when it came to, like, using it as a
well,
therapeutic process?
wait, did you say?
Am I coming in all right? I'll text you.
I can't. You're cutting out, man.
Where did
I was just about to say, and I heard you say the word creativity, and I was just about to say that this is right. I've done music my entire
where
life.
did your
My first
creativity come
bands.
into play in using it as a
What's that?
therapeutic process?
Yeah, for sure. Um, when uh, when this was all going down, um, hold on, let me see what you wrote.
Mm.
What did your creativity come into play? Yeah, yeah. You're asking about the creativity. That's just what I was about to get into. Once I was healed enough from this other stuff that I was doing, I was able to kind of get out of bed and start trying to build my world again, which I had no idea what that was. And I'd done music my entire life. My first band was in 1985, I think. And I had played the whiskey and all that stuff back in the 80s and 90s. So I've always been very into music and writing and in bands. And for some reason, I was just drawn to sit down and write. And I started writing and recording and producing my music. And it kind of saved my life, man.
Mm.
It took me out of all the suffering I was in, and I got to sit and just a creative space. And I would go sit down and start on a song, and 7 hours later emerge, and I'd felt good for 7 hours. I felt at peace, and I hadn't felt that for 8 months.
Wow.
And it it saved me, and I started becoming addicted to my music. So that's when I really dove into my music and recording it. And about this time, um, a friend of mine was also going through a really hard time, a female friend. And we were talking, and the stuff I was telling her reminded her of some of the stuff that she was hearing from a mutual friend we had that I hadn't spoken to in many years, an actor named Corey Feldman. And so she was saying, you should get in touch with him and talk to him about this stuff and blah, blah, blah. So I'm not going to call him. He can call me if he wants. And he was telling her, I'm not going to call him. He can call me if he wants. So eventually, I think I was at her house and she just picked up the phone and was like, here, talk to him. And so I started talking to him, and we ended up talking for like an hour and a half. And we had done a movie together back in '90 called Meatballs 4. It wasn't called that at the time, but that's when I had first met Corey. And we didn't really talk much since then. I mean, we had no animosity or anger towards each other, but we weren't really close friends or anything. So then I started talking with him, and he had a poker night where it was kind of like a celebrity poker night, industry poker night, where people that are in the industry can come and we can all let down our hair and not worry about it. And one night I'm at the poker night, and Corey says, "Hey, you want to play bass for my band?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not really a bass player, Corey. I played guitar my whole life, and I play drums and sing, but I'm not really a bass player." And he's like, "Yeah, but you can learn. You play guitar." I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah, it's not that different, you know." And I was like, "Sure, I'll do it." And so we jumped into rehearsal, and this is 2021. And then in 2022, we played our very first gig at the Whiskey A Go Go on Sunset, and we played it on Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022. So Tuesday, 222 2022. And it happened to be my birthday. I was born on February 22nd. So my first gig with Corey was on my birthday.
Hmm.
And after that, he decided, you know what, let's go on tour. And so he contacted his booking agents, and we lined up a tour, and off we went. And we got back, and there was demand for another tour. So we went on a second and then a third. And by the end of the third tour, we were selling out the House of Blues and the Observatory down here, which is
Wow.
a big venue. And we got the word that Limp Bizkit is asking if we would like to join them on the tour for Loserville. Um, and so that was exciting news, of course, you can imagine. So we all agreed and went into rehearsal again. And this past summer, 2024, I toured with Limp Bizkit and the Corey Feldman band, playing bass for Corey and having the time of my life doing that. It's one of those things as a kid you fantasize looking out and seeing the crowds that big, when you're rocking out in your room. And I actually got to see that, and it really inspired me to continue with my own music. Because I much prefer writing my own stuff than playing somebody else's stuff. Although I thoroughly enjoy playing any music, but so that's when I started saying, you know what, I've been on tour for the past 2 3 years with Corey, and I saw how his plan and how he did it, and I think I can do the same. And it's time to start focusing on me a little bit and putting out this album, because this album means a lot to me. It was all the writings of that time that basically saved my life. And it's not like the songs are the most prolific, deep songs in the world,
Yeah.
but some of them are, and some of them are very vulnerable and truthful. And I hope they resonate with people.
Was there a
And
degree of film? Am I coming in now?
yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Hey.
We can get to the question I just texted you in a second. Because in the last few years, you've been processing that tragedy and using creativity and to get yourself into a much better headspace. Was there ever a point where acting had that same sort of effect on you when it came to dealing with emotions in your
Hmm.
previous time?
That's a good question, and I don't think so. I think that prior to what happened in 2019, I was a very different person. So uh, I don't know if I was searching acting and my career, my profession, as something that is just a genuine expression and joy for me and a peaceful place for me. I
Mm-hmm.
was doing it more from an ego place of I want to be the best actor and I want to get an Oscar and I want to be famous. And it wasn't really about a process of healing or serenity or joy for me. It was more of an egoic ambition that I was going after.
Mm-hmm.
So I never really, since that's when I was really pursuing acting, I don't think I ever really felt like, wow, I'm in my element and I'm not thinking about anything else and this is what I'm supposed to do with life. Which I feel that with music more so. But
So
in another way, I also think that all the arts are connected. They're just a different form of self-expression and they're all just different forms of
mm-hmm.
storytelling and connecting with people and giving people experiences and information and tools sometimes, and it can be done through a
Yeah.
painting or through a song or a film. And if if you're a true creative, I feel like it's all just a way of expressing, and you'll learn the different tools that you can use,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a microphone and a guitar or a camera and a script. You'll learn the different ways if you're a creative.
Do you think that with music though, because when it comes, well, you're playing instruments as well as singing. There's a more personal touch that you get to have more creative control over, as well as a more direct form of expression, as opposed to portraying a different type of person. When it comes to that art that you find more fulfilling and more engaging.
Here's how I would address that. I think that music is definitely more a direct relationship between artist and fans,
Mm.
because a true artist is being vulnerable and inviting you into their brand and their experience. And if you get it, then you become a fan. And it's kind of a relationship that you have. And as an artist, that's very fulfilling to be able to give that way your voice and your message, right? As an actor, you're given a story and a character and other lines to play, and so it's not necessarily your message. However, when I approach acting and the technique I use, um, if there's a scene that's about borrowing money from my father, okay, I don't make the scene about borrowing money from my father. I figure out what is my objective. And the reason I don't do it a surface level objective is because there might be people in the audience that have never had to borrow money. And now
Mm.
they're not going to relate to my objective. And I want to be as relatable as possible so the audience
Right.
roots. So what I want to do is try to go to the humanest thing possible. And maybe that would be in this situation. I want my father to prove he loves me. Now we can
Mm.
all relate to that. And if it's not the word father, we can put girlfriend, mother, wife, boyfriend, whatever. But we can all relate to that. That's a
It's
human
transmissible
relate.
to a lot of different relationships.
Correct. So if I go after that as my objective on a subconscious level, the audience is now relating to me on I'm going after love on a subconscious level as they're watching me ask for money, because all of my subtext, it's more than the money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, as an artist, what I can do is bring truth to going after that love from my father that you as an audience can relate to. And that's what's therapeutic. It's not my message as if I were a musician,
Right.
you see, but you can still relate. And I think that's where the audience becomes attached to certain actors, as the actors are able to relate the emotional content of what it's like to be in that situation that transcends the situation and hits the audience where they apply it to their own lives. And if you're a good actor, you're able to personalize other lines and another character and make it just as real and just as human on a human emotional level as if it were you in that scene in that movie.
Yeah.
But in the subtext, you're actually, the whole scene is about you getting your dad to love you and all the actions you're taking and behaviors and things that you've planned out to try to get your dad to do this. Audience picks up on it at the subconscious level and they relate. A lesser actor would go after the objective of I need my dad to give me money, and he would play what's written on the page. And yes, we identify on a superficial level as an audience, but we're never going to be grabbed by that actor.
He wouldn't have picked
And
up
to
on
me,
the
art is about grabbing people and saying, look at this emotion, look at what you're uncomfortable with here, face this, take a look at that. And you can either hate it or love it, but at least
right.
it gives you a reaction, you know?
Was there anything in particular, talking about fathers, when your father got you into acting that he passed on to you
Oh
that felt
man,
personal to him?
I'm getting, I'm getting like every other word. Was
I'll
there
text it.
something?
I'll text it. Was there something personal to
I'm
you that
listening.
your father passed on to you as an actor because he was
Oh
also
yeah,
one?
I don't, I can't hear you, but you did text me the question of, um, right before what you just sent me. I'll hit on it really quickly. When looking back at the span of my career, what do you think you would have done differently, and what would I keep the same? I'm really a person that believes, that everything is kind of like God's plan, and if I just stay out of my own way, then things will go right. And when I look at back at my career, I don't put a judgment on it. I think I did the best I could with what I knew at the time. Um, I did have an experience where I was Me Too'd. If you look at my IMDb, you'll see my work and going up and up and up. And like Stephen King, sometimes they come back, and the Ruby in Paradise and these films, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's like independence, small little thing here and there, blah blah blah. I was I was approached by somebody in Hollywood that had a lot of power, and I didn't accept the sexual advances from him, and as a result, I can see my career line on IMDb as a direct relationship.
Do you think a lot of
Um,
actors have experiences like that they just don't talk about?
yeah, for sure, for sure. I think it's more obvious with the women. But what a lot of people don't know or realize about Hollywood, and it makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of homosexuals in the arts,
Yeah,
and I think that that's probably, as far as a business goes, there might be more of that in this business than, let's say, computer tech.
sure.
That would just be normal, whatever. And so I think you see, uh, that they're running a lot of the show, so to
Mm.
speak. And what isn't talked about as much is the different men that got approached by some of those gatekeepers in power. And I think it might be even more embarrassing for a man to step forward and say
Yeah,
something, you know.
yeah,
Then
yeah.
it's like it's shameful for a woman, but very embarrassing for a man,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And the man shouldn't feel embarrassed, and the woman shouldn't feel shame, but it's just like an emotional thing that happens. So I'm sure there's a lot more. I mean, Hollywood is a cesspool in a lot of ways. And I just want to put this out there because I see a lot of stuff on Instagram with like, you know, boycott Hollywood. Hollywood's filled with pedophiles and Satanists and all this. And, you
You
know,
do see a lot of that on the
like you
internet.
do.
Yeah.
And I came from a Hollywood family, and I was raised in the industry. And I can tell you 100% that there are good people in Hollywood. There are God fearing people in Hollywood. There are people that hate pedophiles. There are people that hate Satanists. There
Mm.
are people that are doing their part, you know, that are trying. And to lump all of us in with the
Yeah, it's
cesspool,
not fair. Yeah.
it's not fair. And it's my family, it's my family's business. And my granddad, you know, he was never wearing robes and chanting to Lucifer. You know,
Yeah.
he actually, if you do any research on my grandfather, he was Hollywood's first bad boy, and he kind of gave Hollywood the finger. And that might be why he wasn't involved in a lot of that stuff. But I just want to put the word out there that not everybody in Hollywood is a pedophile or Satanist. I have a lot of friends that are
Sure.
working actors that are good people, and we talk about it, and we talk about what can we do about it. And it is a real thing, but not everyone is involved in it. You know, some
Mm.
people have good genes, and they look young. Doesn't mean they took adrenochrome.
Right.
You know,
Because well,
it's
Hollywood
like
also
I know
does
some of these
select.
people, and It's like I'm a lot older than I look, and I've never taken adrenochrome or been to some ritual to make me look young. It's just I happen to have some decent genes.
Hollywood is a good selector of genes, though. That's
What's
because they
that?
like to get. Am I coming in clear?
Oh man, I so
All
wish
right.
I could hear you. Was there something personal that
Yeah,
your
we'll go ahead and
father
move on to the
passed
next
on to you
question.
as an actor because of he was also one? That's a good question too. My father was Christopher Mitchum, and he was not as successful as my grandfather. So his career was mainly overseas in Europe and Asia. And he'll admittedly tell you that he's not the greatest actor in the world. Um, his advice to me was always pretty much specific to if it was a scene, like, hey, here's what I would do in the scene. It wasn't like a general overall advice for the career of acting. My grandfather was somebody that didn't elaborate a lot and didn't fluff things up. His big advice to me in the Hollywood business of acting was say what you mean, show up on time, and don't trip over the cables. How hard can it be? His thing was how hard can acting be when one of Hollywood's biggest stars is Rin Tin Tin?
I had to go ahead and just switch it over to my hotspot. I don't know what was going on, but my little phone over here is doing the Lord's work.
That's awesome. Okay, here we are
Ah,
back.
you were you cut out right as you were starting to get into the details about what your father's perspective was when it came to passing down what he thought about the world to you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So my father uh, was not as successful as my grandfather. His career was mostly overseas, and he admittedly said, in his words, "Talent skipped a generation." uh, I feel bad when he says that. I don't know if I'd agree, but um, any advice he gave to me about acting or the whole business was pretty much on a specific thing. Like I'd have a question on a scene and go, "Dad, what do you think about this?" Or a question about the industry. What would I do about this? Because my father was also the vice president of the Screen Actors Guild for a while.
How many
So he's
years?
also, oh, crap. I think I just lost you. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hold on.
You're
Hello?
coming in fine. Can you hear me?
All right, cool. Yeah. Um,
How many years was he?
I think my phone, I have to, he was one term. He was a one term. I'm
A
trying to
one and
get my
done kind of
phone.
guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he didn't like it very much. Um, he was trying to do stuff for the actors and was getting a lot of resistance. He came to believe that it seemed or appeared to him that there were certain elements within the Screen Actors Guild that was making it so that they were more appeasing the producers than
Hmm.
standing up for the actors.
I see.
And I think that their thought was if we make the producers happy, then they'll continue to keep using the Screen Actors Guilds. And so they would, a lot, like, for example, I did a film and I never received a residual from it. And I called the Screen Actors Guild and said, "What's going on? Why am I not getting residuals?"
Hmm.
And they said, "Oh, well, the that company, they're known for doing this. What they do is they do an umbrella under an umbrella. They'll do a little production entity, and then once the film's made, bankrupt it, and they never have to pay residuals."
Uh,
I said, "Oh, so you guys know about this?" They said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you're the Screen Actors Guild. Why wouldn't you let me know before I did the movie that this is the
right.
kind of company I'm about to do work with? Not blackballing, nothing, just information of how this company works so I can decide if I want to do it."
Hmm.
No, 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 we don't want to upset the producers. So who are they looking out for? They let an actor go into a job with a company that they know doesn't take care of the actors. And when the actor complains about it, I'm the one who's wrong. They have to make sure the producers are happy.
How long
They
ago
should
was
be
this?
this what was the movie?
How long ago was
Uh,
this observation that your father made about the Screen Actors Guild?
he was in the 80s. He was doing that. He was
Okay,
there. And I've seen, there's a lot of actors that are not necessarily happy with the Screen Actors Guild and certain things that are going on with it. There's some infighting going on. Um, I would like to see it be really just fighting for the actors more, but I'm a little biased because I heard a lot of my dad's information, and
sure.
I'm not one of those guys that's going to grab a sign and go down marching on the streets. I'll kind of see for myself how it's panning out.
Right.
But going back to your question, he really didn't have a lot of advice as an overall thing for my career. It was more specific if I had a question about something with SAG or something like that.
Okay.
My grand my grandfather, on the other hand, he didn't blabble a lot of surface stuff. He was pretty straight to the point. And when I asked him uh, what his advice was, he said, um, "Show up on time, say what you mean, and don't trip over the cables."
I
And
love the
that
trip
was
over the cables part.
yeah, right. Thanks for telling me that. And the funny thing is, I think everyone has tripped over cables on the set, so he's right on that. But
One light has always fallen down on every set that I'm aware of.
right,
At least
something,
once.
something. It's not a party till something's broken, right? But he never really had a lot of reverence for the celebrity culture or Hollywood being, Hollywood. He didn't necessarily understand it. He didn't understand the Oscars. To him, it was like, it would be like watching a bunch of plumbers sit around and pat each other on the backs for their plumbing,
Right. Yeah.
and airing that as a show. Like, why would you do that? It's weird. They're patting themselves on the
Do you
back,
think there's too much ego in Hollywood specifically? Not necessarily in filmmaking or the film industry, but specifically more Hollywood related?
I think so. And you want to say it's a bad thing. That's the impulse. But I really think that in this particular industry, there might need to be a lot of ego and narcissism going on because it's such a tough industry. And everywhere you turn, people are trying to take you down or take away from you. And so your belief in yourself
Mm.
is matters a lot. And if you know people who have made it in this business, you'll see that a lot of them have that quality where they're very driven and they're very looking. It's not that they're not kind people and they're not giving people, but they have that added element where they're really
They've got
focused
that
on
edge.
getting for themselves. It's like, I need to do this and I'm going to do it for me.
Hmm.
And if you're an altruistic person or uh, an overly compassionate or sensitive person, that might be a harder road to go, and you might find yourself doing a lot of artsy films on the side. But I mean, you see these people that are big movie stars, and they're commanding audiences of thousands of people sometimes, and it's someone who's shy or doesn't believe in themselves. That's going to be a tough road to hoe.
Well, there is an argument, I think, for there. It can be. You can make a good argument, I think, for the grandeur and the ego that potentially goes into these Hollywood ceremonies because it's not just in them patting themselves on the back. It's also a massive marketing thing that goes into the funding and the marketing for revenue generation. So if you
And
create,
I
say
also,
like
I
take the
also,
Oscars.
I also believe a lot of those are ritualistic.
Well, there's some people that do think that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen. I think uh, one thing I've seen floating around on the internet, especially with the fallout of Diddy and whatnot, is like everyone going back through all of the Oscars and then people paying homage or like to Beyonce and thanking her in like really random scenarios
Yeah.
on stage and everything. And when once Diddy went to jail and some stuff came to light, everyone's kind of combing back through a little bit of the recent Hollywood history, in the last 20 years, kind of looking think what like they're wondering what's up.
I think what is going to come to light and what most people are not going to want to hear and why it's not to light is I'm not even wondering if I want to talk about it.
Is there a vague
I
level that
think
you can
that
talk about it?
well, I think on a surface level, people are going to realize that Diddy is very much like Jeffrey Epstein, and
Hmm.
that they are both contracted by alphabets, and that they are honeypotting people in power and people with influence, so that they will always be controlled.
Do you have
Because you
personal
cannot.
reasons to suspect this?
I know people who have been invited into these groups.
Mm.
I've seen the invitations. I know that this stuff goes on. I haven't personally experienced it to myself, but what
Okay.
I for example with the Epstein thing, um when that first happened, when it first came out, I did a lot of research in that, and I saw the ties that he had to the Mossad through Jelaine and her father Robert, and his boat being the Jelaine, and before he passed away, having a handler signed to her, and suddenly Epstein shows up, and who knows where he got his money,
Yeah.
and all of these things. And through my research, way back when it first broke, I said, "Oh, it's a honeypot. He's supposed to get people, celebrities, power people down there and get them videotaped doing inappropriate things." And
Mm.
the Mossad is behind it. And as we all know, our U.S. intelligence are friends with the Mossad, and
Hmm.
so it's a operation because we can't spy on our own people. You have it going through the Mossad, and we all share the information and we share the tapes, and we now have these people that we can control,
Hmm.
basically.
Do
They
you
can
think that
control.
this, well, ultimately, you know,
But just really quickly, I think that's exactly what P. Diddy was.
hmm,
But within the Hollywood community, he was tapped to get people honeypotted and
I
get
see.
them on tape doing stuff so that the Mossad and the the powers that be are able to have control over these people, because the last thing you want is people with a lot of influence shooting their mouth off on a narrative that's counter to your narrative.
Right, right. I mean, I try to be a very responsible person when it comes to these sorts of topics, but at the same time, when there's such an alluring edge when it comes to how many pieces you can put together efficiently, and especially when it comes to Hollywood. Hollywood is, Jeffrey Epstein. I forget. He's kind of, he was he wasn't always. I mean, he was in the public light, like, kind of, but only by association. But
Right, right.
you have other figures where it seems like potentially these sorts of um, activities are also happening, which would presumably be much more heavily safeguarded because of how public they are. And it's just like, if the degree of truth that it could possibly end up turning out to be when it comes to what the full story is, then you know I have a hard time seeing that sort of model being sustainable into the future, especially with the age of the internet. This sort of stuff, obviously it would have worked a lot better before the internet.
Right,
And
right.
maybe you'd be able to tell me a little bit about that, because you're older than I am, and you'd be able to actually speculate as to what the scene may have looked like prior, especially being younger, getting into it prior to the internet, as well as after it. It's harder to control things online now,
For
and as
sure.
far as to what gets out, what gets leaked. But now we're also we're entering the era of AI, where everyone's gonna be questioning everything that they see online. And
Right.
so we are also entering another area where it's potentially, there's a whole new level of control that could happen, when it comes to the flow of information, and as least as far as what people would believe, based on what they see and they research on, because we all live in different corners of the globe, and we can only use the internet to the extent that we can. But it's a hard sustainable model. It's just because, as somebody who's in the Midwest, I mean, you can give me your perception as someone who is in LA. We've seen a lot of business actually come to the Midwest. It's a lot of stuff's come to Atlanta. and then Nashville, and then potentially Sundance is looking at seriously at Cincinnati being their headquarters now. And we're having big Hollywood movies. Also, like the recent Superman was filmed. I've talked about this on the podcast. Super was filmed at least in part in Cleveland. It seems like there's in the last decade there's been a shift of filmmaking going out of Hollywood. And I've talked to people that I've known from who have done work in New York, and it's like the Midwest is where the action is actually happening, but the big businesses are in L.A. and New York. It's just they're taking
We'll
advantage of the
see
tax
after the
credits.
fire.
Well, yeah. It's I didn't think honestly I would witness as many natural disasters as I have, growing in the
Right?
last decade. And I don't know if this is indicative of like just growing, of like just becoming like a more matured adult. It's like what I'm expected to kind of live through, and I don't know. It's like there's an unprecedented thing happening every 6 months, and it's exhausting.
No, I'm older than you, and it wasn't like that when I was a kid. And if it was, it wasn't reported.
That's both relieving and terrifying at the same time.
It is like what's accelerating this, right?
Yeah.
That's a scary thought.
What about the uh,
I
industry
was
in LA? Have you noticed the business leaving LA?
Yeah, well, one of the problems is, and I'm not a politician, and I don't like to get into politics.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
not fun.
no, and I don't like to put a stance out there too because it's nobody's business, what I think. But with that said, I do think if I objectively look at the film industry in Southern California, that the governing of California has suffered, and as a result, the prices here are so high,
Mm.
and the quality of living is not that great. Other than the weather, the homelessness and the crime is getting so bad that because of that, it's more of an incentive to film anywhere but California.
Mm.
A lot of places like I don't know for fact if Georgia is doing this right now, but many states and even countries will do this. Well, they'll offer you an incentive to film in their state, and like they'll find out a movie's filming, and they'll reach out to the film board in Hollywood or whatever, and they'll try to give them an incentive to say, "Hey, come film it in our state," because if a movie comes to your state and let's say it's a low $20 million budget, that's a sudden $20 million influx of cash into your economy.
Mm-hmm.
So governors of the state want that. So how do they get the films to choose their state? They'll give incentives, like certain amounts tax breaks if they film in their state. And
Ohio
so
has tax credits now. It's been
yeah,
really good for business.
and you'll probably see more film coming there because of that. So that's why a lot of the film is going out. Los Angeles is outpricing itself of people, of business, of everything, and we'll see what happens after it burnt down. I mean, who knows if it's and how much of it burns down? They might just relocate to Georgia altogether. Who knows?
Potentially.
Yeah.
It's hard to speculate because it's still happening as we're talking.
Hmm.
It's still happening. The fires,
Yeah.
and you know, I mean, New York is notoriously difficult to try to film in, and
Yeah.
this might be the thing that actually kicks off that final push over the edge for the industry fully locating to the Midwest.
That would be
And I
cool.
mean, that's sure it's great for people that live here like me. Um,
Right.
but for filmmakers out in LA, like for example, I'm talking to two individuals tomorrow who they I'm talking to them about their feature that's getting distributed and released in February. It was like a supernatural western, and they sent me a screener of it yesterday, and I quite enjoyed the movie. And they did a lot with just $100,000 budget. It was really impressive. When you know the budget, it was very, very well managed when you see the
Oh,
production
good.
value they were able to do. But they're also based in LA, and I've been having active conversations with them, as this stuff is happening. And one of them like even opened up their home for like filmmakers to come charge their equipment at, and everything. And so you do see
Oh,
that little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, for at least internally within the film community itself. But when you look at the large scale implications of what this is going to happen, it's just it's the the biggest tragedy is that the tragedy is going to fuel other parts of the industry's success. So it's
Well,
like bittersweet.
it's also like everything is changing. I heard recently that the film industry is about to do a big change. And I don't know the validity of this. The person who told me this was very depressed because he had been told this by his agents and managers that the way that the film industry is starting to go now is that production companies are looking at influencers,
Hmm.
and if they have enough followers, they will write a movie around the influencer.
I
So the
see.
influencer is now the star. So they're not going to have a need for actors and movie stars anymore. They will go to influencers because they already have 1 million, 2 million followers. So that's free marketing,
Which is
right? They
hard to
could,
generate just from the bottom up. Like breakout stars are seems like they're going to start dying at least being generated internally within the industry. Now it seems like the stars are kind of becoming outsourced when it comes to
yeah.
yeah, and it's
And it's
which
changing the
is
business model because what they're saying also is no longer they're no more actors. It'll be influencers, and a lot of the background will be done with AI. The scripts will be written with AI. Out of the
hmm
filming and shots will be AI. And so the film industry, which used to be a team of 100 people working for 3 months, is now going to be done mostly on a computer with an influencer, and that's the future of films. That's not good.
well, it all depends whether or not the market supports that type of work. Ultimately, the market is what it says, what is good for business and what's not. And
Yeah,
I have it's difficult to see that as a viable long-term business strategy for
I
this
agree.
reason, because people are going to theaters less and less now, and
Mhm.
they're already testing the waters when it comes to using that business model, and they're not. It does not seem like that type of business model is going to generate that strong of an output, especially in this day and age where movies already kind of feel like they're written by AI, unless it's a more indie film, like for instance, like anything the company A24 would put out, where everything's generated by a person. It's generally smaller, but the stories are at least they're not necessarily always better all the time. They're they, you always feel like you
Human.
left knowing the artist, though. You always, whether you liked it or not, you always left knowing exactly what you got, and you didn't see necessarily that you didn't see that movie before, and
Right,
that's
right.
the niche that A24 companies and indie films are capitalizing on is just the good old bread and butter of getting artists on the screen
Which is,
that
I
has
think
something to
it's,
tell.
I feel like there's a definite division going on because I feel like the producers want to save money and do this AI crap, but
Hmm.
the audience is craving authentic these days. As a musician, I'm studying like marketing and stuff, for example. They are saying people want authentic. They don't want overproduced. They don't want perfection. They want to see
Mm.
you in your garage making a video of your song, not you with a $10,000 budget.
They want the vulnerability and the suffering of the character.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
fundamentally what they want. We've seen the full, especially with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we've seen the fullest extent you can take that technology, and it's amazing. It's beautiful,
It's
but
fun.
now it's fun. It's entertaining, and but especially I
But we
think
want something human. It's like we want human connection or something.
yeah, and that's all what art is all artists are basically just people that are trying to use art to be able to connect with other people. That's
Yeah.
it's kind of a sad reality, but it's also a beautiful reality because of what comes out of it.
Yeah, it is sad.
There's billion-dollar industries built on suffering.
Right. Aren't most industries built on suffering?
Oh, Not the trade. Well, actually, I was going to say the trades, but being someone who is currently, as at least as their day job is still in the trades, it's like, okay, I can't really say that. There is suffering, but at least there's a tangible infrastructural product that you get as a result of the suffering.
I saw a meme today where someone asked, like, a spiritual person, what planet is causing all this suffering? And they answered, Earth.
That's funny. I'm gonna use
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use that one. That's a good one because I've been on a number of dates where it's like I've met the astrology girl, and it's just like I
Mm,
don't really have any good like one-offs, but that's a good one. I'm gonna
that's a
pocket
pretty
that one.
funny one. Yeah.
um, do you think? Well, I mean, it's hard to say. Obviously, with the situation in L.A. Is still developing. Do you think you'll end up staying in L.A.?
I've been wanting to leave before the fire. As you know, I came back in 2019, and I've done my healing, and now I'm trying to get my world going. And I love the amount of opportunity in Los Angeles. Everyone here is trying to get something going. Everybody's ambitious and a dreamer, and moving forward, and I love that. However, the quality of living, as I mentioned before, is just getting so bad. You get a one bedroom apartment where you live, and it's probably like $1,200, maybe. I'm guessing. I don't know. Here, it's going to be 3,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah. When I moved to California from Texas, I had a small little house that had two bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a bathroom. That was it. Not even closet space, storage, nothing.
Right.
Okay. I was paying 3 grand a month for that.
Holy crap.
I was living in Texas before I moved to California, and I had a 2-story apartment. There was 2 bedrooms, uh, about the same size as Santa Barbara, one, and I was paying 1,200.
Hmm.
So Santa Barbara, what I got in Santa Barbara was 3,000. Anywhere else in America, it's about 1,200. So to be here for the opportunity, yeah, it's great.
Sure.
But can you afford it? It's like, how do you make ends meet when 3 grand a month right there is just gone in rent? That's not gas and food and phone. You're going to have to make 5, 6 grand a month just to live here. What jobs are paying that after taxes?
Not in
So a lot of
California. It's like not in California. No.
no. So you're seeing people just leave like rats from a ship.
It's sad. It really is sad. Um,
No.
but we'll just have to see how it plays out. Obviously.
The cool thing is, with the changing of technology and platforms, and it's also a negative, but the cool thing is people that didn't have a voice, that are our creatives, are being able to get a platform and put stuff out there. And I think that's awesome. And musically, I don't like it because I have to compete with 100,000 songs a day being released.
Right.
But at the same time, screw those gatekeepers that stopped us from having the option of hearing 100,000 songs a day,
Hmm.
in a way.
Do you know?
So I
Well,
like.
what's the? Because I'm not necessarily the most involved in the music side of the art
Mm.
industry, but I'm very intrigued by it because I love I love the art of I love seeing artists talk about how they compose things, especially film composers, and seeing that and seeing their process. Um,
Hey, I got to watch Danny Elfman when he was scoring Mission Impossible. I was
oh, you
invited there.
did? Oh
Uh-huh.
wow! How'd you get into
How
that?
cool is that? Um, Strangely enough, I was helping somebody with a garage sale, and I started talking with a guy who was shopping at the garage sale, and it turned out to be Danny Elfman's brother.
Okay.
And he knew of me from my films and stuff. And so we started talking, and he said, my brother's scoring Mission Impossible if you want to go check it out. And I was like, I would love to. What an honor that would be. And so he invited me down, and like a day or two later, I
Which
went
which
down
Mission
there.
Impossible was this? The first one?
The very first one, yeah. And the scene he was scoring was the one where at the end of the scene the helicopter blade ends right at the nose.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember
I
that
don't know if
one.
you remember. Yeah, it's like the helicopter going through the tunnel and the cars and everything, and then at the end, the scene ends with the helicopter, the blade right there. But I watched him scoring it, and they had the whole orchestra there, and he's up there doing this stuff like a conductor. They have movie screens there, so all the musicians are able to have their writing and be able to like watch it at the same time. I'd never seen it. It was
What was
really
his
cool.
brother doing there that he was able to just get you into the building?
I guess just being his brother,
Oh,
you
okay.
know, just the fact he was his brother, like, hey, I'm going to come by with a friend kind of thing.
Oh, well, that
I
seems
didn't,
more open than what you'd think. Like
yeah,
the inside of the Hollywood, the process would end up being. But this was also like over 20 years ago, so who knows how
yeah,
the security was back then.
right. Right.
But the most interesting about the thing about composing is, there's no, generally speaking, there's no lyrics, there's no dialogue. The
Yeah,
notes are the words themselves,
right.
and choosing, the different layers of the composition of the piece of music that you're applying the film to. Uh, they're different. They're different people, and those different layers, they represent different sides of the argument or sides of the conversation. So like you'll have one layer that is either complimenting or disagreeing, something in the melody that's presenting the main argument, and just that process of deciding which voices to be heard in the song and which ones not to is something that's just it is the closest thing to magic, I think.
It's really cool. And I don't think people realize how much music sets the feeling of every scene because you're not paying attention to it most of the time,
Hmm.
you know? But there's a lot of truth to everything you said. And to me, there's a, I've never done it, but there's got to be a talent to be able to watching the action and composing to the movement,
Hmm.
you know? And then there's obviously certain chords and chord progressions that will create certain kinds of tensions or sadness or feelings, and that they have some command of that. But I would think it'd be quite a challenge to watch a scene and be able to write for each moment in the scene.
Yeah, yeah.
Because there's moments where it's like dong da 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 dong da 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 dong do do
Yeah,
do 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 dong da da and it kicks back up.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You got to come up with that stuff. That's and be able to write it down to give it to a whole orchestra,
Hmm.
right? That's crazy.
um Going back to your career, do you think you'll continue your course in music, or do you think you might incorporate a little bit more acting or pursue that a little bit more further in the future?
Well, my passion right now is definitely in music. That's where my heart is. I am an actor. That's what I've always kind of been since I started in '85. Um, so I guess if I had my druthers, I would put my most of my energy into my music and the thing with acting is it's not like a profession that you can pursue 24/7.
Right.
It's like I can go to the gym and do two-a-days, and I can restrict my diet and make sure that I'm as healthy as I can be, or go to bed at certain. I can do all that stuff, and you're not getting paid for it, and that's all part of being an actor.
Hmm.
But to actually work, you have your hands in somebody else. You're in somebody else's hands. They
That's the
have
most
to call
frustrating
you
part.
out. Yeah. So it's not like if I didn't have music as an actor, what would I do during my day being an actor? Well, I could watch my diet and go get a tan and work out so I'm presentable and looking good. But other than that, what am I doing? There's not
Right.
much. I maybe study for an hour or two, some acting, or go to a class, but still there's a lot of hours left.
You're not
With
acting
music,
unless you're acting.
exactly. And with music, I can be in my car and come up with a melody in my head without anything. And by the
Yeah.
time I get home, run up to my room and record it. There's no somebody else telling me, okay, you can work now. Now you get the chance to do your music. But acting there is.
Hmm.
So
Well,
I think I'll pursue the music because of that. But since I can't daily just go out and act, I'll leave that to the agents and managers to try to find some stuff. And if I find a project that fits me and they want to work with me and I want to work with them, I would do it in a heartbeat. And I would put my heart into it 100%.
Okay.
And I would make my life about that film at that time. And then it'll be over, 2, 3 months later, it's done. And there's no more work I can do on it. I can go back to my music. And that's kind of what I'd like to do.
Mm. Well, I mean, the fact that you're able to stay constantly creative, and what's the longest you've been inside of that flow state when it comes to creativity?
It's when I write also, I've written a few screenplays, and the longest I've been in a flow state was in writing a screenplay, and that was probably like 6 or 7 hours. I find that when I'm doing music, if I get into a flow state, it's about 2 or 3 hours before my ears start getting tired
I
and I'm
see.
not able to hear like I was. Because when I'm mixing music or tracking music, I'm really paying attention to every sound and how the frequencies are competing with each other and trying to sculpt frequencies
Mm-hmm.
so the kick drum isn't competing with the bass drum so it doesn't sound muddy. And your ear is really paying attention to every little megahertz. And after an hour or two of that, you start losing that edge. It starts becoming blurry. And so if you keep going without realizing it, you can walk away and come back and go, what the heck was I thinking? This sounds like crap, because you were blurry eared mixing.
You have
So
stronger fatigue in music than you do necessarily when it comes to just writing screenplays.
yeah, I think
Mm.
writing screenplays, you just kind of sit back and you're imagining, and it kind of flows out as you're in this other world.
Yeah, it's mostly sitting. I can concur.
Yeah, and it's mostly in your head, and the characters it's almost like you're the translator for the characters in your head. Like they have a life, and you're just writing what they're saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that
Well,
that can really get you lost in the zone for sure. But
mm,
and I would be able to be in that zone with music, 100% focus wise, but the ears get tired, and that pulls
uh,
me out.
it's a
Yeah.
it's a double-edged sword.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, Bentley, I think
What do
our
you
time.
do?
What do I
What do
do?
you do? Yeah, to get in
What
your
do
zone.
I? What do I? Well, I have. Okay, well, I guess I can recap a little bit for you because I guess you don't know much about me. Um, about 6 years ago, I entered post production for my first feature, but it had a lot of CGI in it, and um, going through that process. Originally, it was just a group of essentially people that were just going into college, but the project was too ambitious for the group, and eventually, they tapered off and weren't able to stay on and fulfill their roles. But the CG is what's been holding it up for the longest time. And I eventually found a guy who just decided he wanted to take it on as his passion project, which I'm extremely fortunate for.
Right.
And I've paid him what I can over the years, um, but the CG is almost entirely done, but we're having struggles right now with trying to find a good render farm because the CG is in like 2/3 of the film.
Wow.
And it's like it's a sci-fi drama about a father trying to reconnect with his daughter who he found out committed suicide, and so there's a little bit of a time travel, not necessarily time travel element. It's more like a time viewing thing, but I don't want to get into specifics of it. But I've had that on my lap for a number of years. That's caused a lot of stress.
I bet.
So during that time, I've really worked on my craft of writing, and I wrote a couple of shorts, one recently, but I wrote another feature, which is I got the pages down to 170, and I can't squeeze any more out. And I'm in a writers group right now. I actually started reviewing it, and like I hope they tell me that there's pages to take out, but I'm also deeply afraid that they're going to say there are pages that can't be removed because
Right.
it's a long script. And so it's a double-edged sword again. It's like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't.
Hey, you know what? If by the end of it you can't take any more out,
Hmm.
maybe that's the length of the story.
Yeah.
You
It's
know what I mean?
basically, yeah, if it is what it is, and
I
I'm,
mean, look at Wicked.
getting
How long?
feedback and that sort of thing.
Wicked's almost 3 hours, and it's only part one.
That is true. That is
Right?
very true. Yeah, I didn't think about that. But responding to your question about my flow state is that I recently discovered, and this helped me finish my last feature script, nicotine pouches. I wasn't really a big smoker. I smoked a pipe a little bit, but you don't really inhale that. And I got a little bit of buzz off that, but these nicotine pouches, when I sit down and I take one as I start listening to music that related to the story, it really helps me get into that flow state and stay there for about a good 1 to 2 hours if I'm good, and if I've done great, I've written about 2 to 4 pages
Yeah.
in a day. That's a great day. That's a really great day. And people don't
Right?
understand how great that of a day that
No.
is.
Mm-mm. They think that
Um,
it's easy to whip out 5, 10 pages. It's
no,
like, no,
it's not.
that's
Especially if
probably
it's
2 weeks of
screenplay,
work.
because you have to choose your words wisely. It's not like it's a
Hmm.
book where you can just pontificate and rant and then go back through
Hmm.
and comb and see what you don't like. It's like, no, I have a very limited amount of words I can put on here in order to accomplish what I'm trying to
And
say.
it's gotta set up to pay off, so I gotta choose it correctly.
And then the biggest lesson I learned from this last script that I wrote is um, getting the economy of my words down, and my vocabulary in the last few years has skyrocketed because I've been able to actually figure out how to compress layers of thought within a single sentence, which has
Oh
been
man, I have a great example of that. Like they in the script for was it Bullet? I don't remember. 70s film. Anyway, it's written where the scene is it's a car chase and they're
yeah.
banging into each other and stuff. And instead of writing all of the shit like you're talking about, all it said was the cars race down the road trading paint.
Trading paint. I like that.
How fucking
That
badass.
that is. I don't know if I'll be able to top that one. I'll try, but that is
Right?
that is the
One
most efficient
sentence,
thing.
one sentence, it just was a whole paragraph of describing it.
Yeah.
They drive down the road trading paint.
Especially in an action film, like economy
Hmm.
is absolutely everything, because you need to, because action scenes are obviously going to take up a lot of space on the page. But if it's all action, you got to save room for at least 2/3, maybe 3/4 of dialogue, in order just
Yeah.
to keep that in the film as material to work with.
That's why I
And
wanted to share that one with you. That was an action one, and they got
trading
it
paint.
down. Yeah.
You're
Hey,
giving me a lot of good one-liners here, man. I don't
did you
know.
ever read did you ever read The Writer's Journey?
The Writer's Journey. No, I haven't read that book. I read for screenwriting. I read a book. I forget what it was called by Stephen Katz, and I read another one called The Screenwriter's Bible. Those are the only two things I've ever read,
I
but I
want to
haven't heard of that one.
recommend I want to recommend this book to you. And it started circulating, I think in the 90s. It might have been the 80s. But this guy, Christopher Vogler, studied Joseph Campbell's work. And
Hmm.
Joseph Campbell's mythology guy. And he took all the elements of a story of mythology and broke it down into what elements need to be in a story for the audience to feel satisfied.
What's the name of this book again?
The writer's journey.
The Writer's Journey.
And he made like a 20-page manifesto, kind of like Tom Cruise did in Jerry Maguire,
Yeah,
right at the
yeah, yeah.
beginning of
I
that.
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, he made one of those and handed it out. And the big companies like Paramount and MGM saw this and gave their script readers the manifesto and
Hmm.
said, do not greenlight any scripts that don't follow that 100%.
Interesting.
So that became the gatekeeper for Hollywood writers. That you
Interesting.
better have every element of this guy's book in your script, or they won't even read it at the studios.
Hmm.
Okay, so the manifesto. So the manifesto got so much talk in Hollywood about it that Vogler wrote a book, and it's called The Writer's Journey, and he breaks down every single element that has to be in a screenplay, gives you examples with modern films of how they do it, gives you examples of when they don't do it, how you feel in the movie, gives you every archetype, everything that if you put these elements in your movie, that if the audience doesn't necessarily like it, they'll at least feel satisfied that they got a complete story. Because
Writer's
there's many
Journey. I'll have to
times
check that out.
Yeah, I recommend it 100%. Almost every Hollywood writer in Hollywood has read this book and or uses it.
Okay. The
So
Writer's Journey.
I think it'll up your game in ways. A lot of the stuff you might already know, and maybe you already know it all. But first, I've written probably 11 screenplays, and that book in particular, I went back and reread some of my screenplays after reading the book to double check, and I'm like, oh no, oh I could add that, and boom, my screenplay got better, and I was like, whoa, I thought it was really good before. Wow,
Yeah.
so as a writer, I want to recommend that book, and it's a well respected book in the entertainment business.
I appreciate it. I'll check it out for sure.
Yeah, I think you'll like it.
Well, Bentley, it's
Yeah.
been great talking to you. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, but you know we are
And we
working through the
made it.
we are working through the apocalypse. To be fair,
Yes. And you didn't
um,
get snowed in. I didn't burn down.
fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Is there any final thoughts you want to leave with the audience?
Uh, if I come through Ohio, I hope we can meet for a coffee.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a thought. Um, I guess what would I like to leave for the audience? Hey, these times are tough, and I'm in the middle of it here in LA, and things are getting gonna get tougher, I think. And don't be afraid to reach out if you're hurting. We're all suffering. We're all just human here. And reach out to somebody if you're hurting. I think it's really important to know. And thank you for anybody who's seen my art and supports it. And I hope I can continue to put my heart into my art that reaches people that they enjoy. So thanks for the support, anybody out there. And and thank you for having me on your show. That's really cool. And I hope we get to meet in person one day and do a handshake and a
Yeah, of
coffee
course. I
together.
appreciate you coming on, especially it's giving the situation that you're in.
Yeah, well, you got an update for the California fires anyway.
I did a very very live update.
Yeah.
But all right, well, uh, have a good
Well,
one, man. I appreciate it.
you make your way out here, look
Yeah,
me up.
yeah. If I ever head out to LA, I'll text you. I got your number now,
All right,
so
man. And if you read that book, send me a text and let me know what you thought.
I will. We'll do. Yeah,
All right, promise?
I will. I promise.
All
All
right,
right.
brother.
Have a good one, man.
You rock. I appreciate you. Thank you.